chop, 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 chop.
And this is why that's where when things are not transparent enough, you leave space for people to speculate,
and
fill it off with suspicion.
Yes.
All right, you're welcome to 0100 Naija. This is the post-election episode, the post-2023 election episodes. I am Lefty Scientist, and with me here are two of the friends of the podcast. We have T here and Muri. Yeah, you've met both of them before. And so Sir T, you can say hi to the house.
Hello, house. Excuse me. It's been a while. Well, we are back here, and then we'll have a lot of things to talk about. Juicy stuff, actually, considering what has happened recently, the election stuff. So just keep your hearts and your ears wide open. We're sure to give you enough stuff.
All right. And Muri?
I'm happy to feature again in this podcast, and I hope to share some interesting points relating to the of the happenings surrounding the 2023 elections. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy it.
All right. So this is how many days are we now post the election day? This is like, yeah, it was on Saturday. This is like 4 days after the election. The elections happened on Saturday, the past Saturday, and by now we've all seen by the time this podcast comes out anyway, everybody hearing this must have seen the results, and we've been following the fallout from the elections, everything that happened during the elections, and afterwards then we've been following the fallout online and everywhere we rely on for information ever since. And I think we had different plans for what to record this week. In fact, I made an announcement by the end of last week about the episode that will be coming out this week. So we had a different episode in mind totally. But given the things, how the polity, the air, the atmosphere, the prevalent atmosphere in the country, I decided we couldn't just go ahead with our previous plans, and we just had to do something. We have to record an episode, talk about the elections and everything that's been happening ever since. All right, so I think this is a good place to start from then. So about the election, I think I'll start by sharing my experiences, and then my other guests here in the studio. We call it a studio, right?
Talk about elections. So elections are actually into, I think, 5 stages or 4.
Yeah.
The pre-election.
Exactly. So okay, I think how we're going to go about it is this. Okay, I intend to start with I'll talk about my experience on the election day.
Okay.
I'll start with the election day itself. How the election was carried out, all the activities that took place there, my perception, my observations, and then following that, okay, my guests here will give their own experiences too about that, and then we'll go back a bit and talk about the pre-election period, talk about what our perceptions were, what our predictions, our expectations were during the pre-election period.
What happened after?
Exactly, and following that, then will be what happened afterwards. The different things that happened afterwards, starting from the delay of the transmission of the results and the fallout from that, and then the drama that happened online. Exactly. So I'm just laying out the outline of what's going to come with this podcast. Yeah. So I hope you get to stay with us for all that. Of course, it's promising to be a very engaging episode too. Of course. So to start with then, the election itself, the election took place on Saturday. Of course, it's been highly anticipated before then. We've been expecting this for a long time, for years now, and ever since the embargo on the campaign was lifted last year, we've all been involved, or at least at some stage or at some point, we've been very engaged with all the different activities during the campaign and whatnot. So in preparation for the elections, I registered, got my PVC early last year. As a matter of fact, okay, I registered for the PVC. I received it late last year. Late last year was when I received it. So And in preparation for the elections, the schools were closed. At least we were given a break, a 3 weeks break period, starting from the 22nd. Okay, so I left school to go back home on Friday then, so I could vote, of course. And Saturday morning I cleared up my schedule, and then
What time do you leave?
the time I left, actually I was at home, and I was following the happenings there at the polling unit. Yet, and it's happened. Okay, so talking about my experiences and my observations there, it happened that the voting didn't actually start early at my unit.
What time?
It started past 10, or to put it to be more accurate, it was actually almost 11 by the time it started.
Okay,
right?
Because,
yeah, and I got there.
Officials came late, or
no, they were there early. Okay, I think to clarify the issue, I think it started past 10 at the unit. But at my own point, the unit has different points. At my own point there, we didn't start till about 11 past 11, because the personnel there were having issues with the system, with the Beavers machine. Yeah, I think it was just human error in this case, because and this is one of the things we talk about too, about the election and how it was carried out. About the personnel, I think the personnel were really deficient in training.
Yes.
The training was really lacking.
Tell us more of your own.
Just summarize them. We'll talk.
Yes, because now the main delay, what actually delayed them at my point there, and this is something I heard that other people later on afterwards were complaining about in some certain other centers too, of course, was that they claimed to have forgotten the password to the machine, and so they had to wait.
They claimed to have forgotten because most experiences said they were not even given the password.
That's what some people said, right? So they had to wait for that to come through, and then when it came through, I think I was far along on the line, so I didn't actually know what was happening. But
your experience was from the time of it's accreditation,
exactly,
and then before you actually do the voting.
Yes.
So how long did it take you for your accreditation to have taken place and then the voting subsequently?
Well, at my center, the accreditation and voting was taking place at the same time. You get accredited, then you vote, and then you vote. Exactly.
So did you have an idea of what time it took? Because I've heard a lot of positive reports. Unlike before, I'm not really a first-time voter. I can remember my experience in 2011. That was when I first voted. That was in Jos, actually. And then, the old pattern was you come for accreditation, then after that you wait. A stipulated time for voting will now come before you guys will now come around. But recently I heard that what they did was you accredit yourself and then you vote immediately. And so many persons said it took lesser time. Now, I don't know if that's more of an advantage or disadvantage, because from what we are hearing, it took shorter time. But again, because if you came early to a voting unit and then you were accredited and you voted, you might not want to have that patience to wait to defend your vote. Because I saw most persons who left the polling units even before votes were counted, and they didn't make it coming back. Actually, I didn't vote this time around, unfortunately, because of the, I don't want to call it incompetency.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that later on.
Oh, okay.
I should have asked.
Because I was going to talk about my experience on that day. Okay. Because basically, I didn't vote. But where my family went to vote, I followed them to the polling units, basically to observe and also to add strength to numbers of those who will be there to observe and probably defend the votes where the need might arise. Yeah, exactly. So I went there. I think I left with my mom, and then we left around some minutes to 9. I can't remember precisely, but some minutes to 9. And when we went, luckily enough, the agents there, the INEC officials, were already on time, and then they were set up already, but they started some voters education stuff. And that took roughly about 30 minutes trying to explain to people what the boxes meant, what to be done, what should be done, and that. So that took probably 30 minutes, and then she was on the line. Now, luckily enough, I think their own polling point line wasn't that long. Yeah, and I remember they gave them advantage of older persons, come in front, do, and then go. So she didn't take that long, and then she left. But I observed basically it went smooth and nice. I stayed there till votes were counted, and then, as usual, we took pictures of the form, the EC 38, I've forgotten. We took picture of the form as evidence of what had occurred, the result, and then the Beavers was supposed to upload. Now that was where we had problem. I think the agent said they couldn't upload, that they had to wait for password and stuff. At first, we thought it was a network issue. We connected them to our own network hotspot, Novia hotspot, and then still they couldn't actually get the result of uploaded. We had to stay there till roughly in the evening when we now got news that it was not just our polling unit, it was generally nationwide, and that the option left was for them to upload offline. So we asked the agent, and then she said, it was actually a lady, and she said they were not told how to upload offline. So we had to ask some other colleagues via social media until we got the information, and then she was able to do offline. We left. Yeah, that was basically the experience, because let me not say furthermore, because I actually followed. I had to track basically subsequently as the information continued.
Muri, to ask this, did you experience the same issue with the personnel?
No, actually, in my own case, I didn't go on time. You understand? This is not my first time voting. I voted in 2019. So my experience in 2019 was a very harrowing one. I went very early, around say maybe 8 o'clock, but I didn't get to vote till 11. So because of that, this time I was like, okay, I'm not going to go on time. I'm going to go late so that a large bulk of the crowd will have gone. Then I would go with less crowd, and then I would vote. And then as it turns out, and then it turned out that many people had the same idea as I did. A lot of people didn't go on time. Like my elder brother went on time. He went around 7 a.m. and he was like the 7th person in the queue. By say 8, he has already voted and left the place, but he kept going back periodically to observe what was happening. But me, I didn't go till 2. That's when I went, and then the line was so long. And then, unfortunately, I don't know, I will not say unfortunately, it's kind of encouraging, because in my line, the women were more than the men. It was a very long line of ladies. Then the male line was short, but then
percentage. That's what I heard. I don't know. I've not seen the data.
Yeah, the data. Okay, I've seen the overall data. I've not.
The overall data. So
but honestly, in my own polling units, I feel women were more than men in that place, because
were they all able to vote?
Yeah, well, most of them were. Because in my own case, like in my case, I was there since 2. I was on the line. I didn't get to vote till 6. And then when I was at the point of accreditation, after they had scanned my face with the beavers machine and everything, they had marked they gave me paper. Then the INEC official there was saying that ballot paper has finished. There are remaining 9. And then there was a long line of women.
How is that possible?
I'm telling you.
They have a list of everybody that's going to vote at that point.
I don't know what happened.
This still points to the incompetent.
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what happened. The guy was just saying, he was saying that remaining only nine people can vote on that line. And then a lot of people had not voted at that point in time. Like, the line was so long. I'm telling you, but then as I just vote my own, I don't tire already now. I've been there since 2. Initially, I didn't plan to wait that long, honestly. I didn't plan to wait that long. I felt like, what's the point to come and enter? And then the sun was hot. Yeah. I'm telling you. So that was just my own experience.
But were you there till the votes were counted?
No, I was not there. Okay, my brother remained to see as the vote was counted. But me, I was tired at that point, so I just went back home.
Okay. As it turns out, I think my experience was pretty similar to all that too. I got there by past 10, and the voting was just about to start. Then I located my polling points, or my voting point in the polling unit. I joined the queue there. So I actually didn't get to vote till about past 4 in the evening. So so I was on the line for over 6 hours before I finally get to vote. And
a lot of people, even if they had intended to vote, because of this long waiting period, they just feel like, there's no point anymore.
That was the point I was going to make too, because there were a number of people who got discouraged by the long waiting, the long lines, and they left. But they weren't that much actually. I was quite impressed with people's conduct, because people were really patient. They really waited on the line. They waited patiently, and it wasn't even until about 3 past 3 before the first fight almost broke out, and it was a fight over line cutters, and someone was trying to cut the line and stuff. But I think it was snuffed out anyways.
Actually, to give credit to voters this year, I think
they
it
didn't
was
conduct themselves properly.
Peacefully.
Honestly, the only skirmish that I saw in my polling unit was the same issue of line cutting, because you would find somebody like myself. Somebody cut the line in front of me, but because I didn't want to just cause any problem,
just let him be.
So I just let him be. Honestly.
Right. So I think that's it for the most part. That's we have our observation in our own local unit. So I think so personally, I did not observe any case of violence, electoral violence, or any blatant,
nothing like that.
So
of my own.
Personally, so I don't know if personally you
actually I didn't see any of those obvious political thug.
At least not personally.
Yeah,
right?
Not personally. Even though we heard reports.
Yes. I was going to
saw
videos
about, and stuff. Because my cousin called me all the way from Port Harcourt, and then we were asking what was happening, and then right on the phone while we were speaking, it appeared he started running, and then he ended the call. When we called him later, what happened? He said while he was speaking on the phone, he heard gunshot. Military men and policemen came, and then they came, of course, the whole thing that happened there now with party officials of opposition party to come and pick up the box. So while we were speaking, I heard the sound, and then he was running. So that's probably their own experience down there. But I think it was relatively peaceful, at least from the areas which
and from the stuff I've been hearing about the conduct of the election here in Kano State, this is probably the most violence-free election we've had here in a while, if not ever.
Honest, even the party agents, in 2019, the party agents were fighting themselves, but it's like they were all chill with each other.
Exactly.
And I think that owes to the contestants in question.
Yes.
Yeah, because of course the North, it's not as if it was
we are going to discuss this of course later on. We are going to come back to discuss this later on about the relationship between the followers of the different candidates and the candidates themselves too, and what happened with the election. Okay, so personally, like we didn't experience that, but there were reports of such occurrences in places. I think I heard of one that happened in Ungogo local government. I think there was another case
in Take.
Exactly.
I also saw the one in Take in news, right?
But I think apart from those two,
was it the one that also involved the
one of the
Honorable House of Reps? It's also Take, right? Because I heard it was apprehended today also.
I think the other cases of violence too were in the pre-election time, although I think we'll come to discuss that before the elections. So talking about the voter turnout in this election, in my polling unit, the turnout was quite impressive, as a matter of fact. So this was my first time voting in that unit. I spoke with a number of people there, and it turns out my perception was right. People who had voted at that unit before, at least in 2019, they acknowledged the fact that back then, 4 years ago, the turnout in that unit wasn't that much. In fact, it wasn't half of what I had. It was in a square, in the little town square, and it was full. When I got there, it was full with people. Everybody was.
That's one thing. I don't know whether I should call it the irony of data. If you follow election figures, data-wise, from the previous ones to these ones, it's as though the numbers of voters turnout is declining. But that does not really reflect the reality. Because if you check, I think 2003, a single candidate got almost 24 million votes casted for him alone. Now compare,
I don't have to go.
No, 1999, 24. That's Obasanjo. I remember vividly. I checked it. 24 million, and then subsequently it was decreasing, but still within the 20. Now compare that to what we have now. I think even last election, Buhari was almost 15. And then his contestant, opponent was about 12 thereabout or so. When you compare that to what we are having now, it's more like somehow declining.
Because what we have now in this particular election that just took place was total votes. The amount of people that voted was about just over 24 million.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's out of about 87 million PVCs collected.
I think it was estimated to be around 27%.
Yeah.
Turnout, which is
it's
very,
terrible.
very poor.
It's very poor.
But again,
And
the question
very
begs:
poor.
does it really reflect the reality?
Yeah, to me,
I think so.
in my opinion, it reflects the reality. Because the reason why I'm saying this is that a lot of people kind of lost faith, you understand, in the electoral process. Like, example, in my own personal experience, in 2019, my entire family voted. Like, everybody in the family voted. But then this time, only 3 of us voted. You understand? Out of 7 of us, only 3 voted. This is just 4 people. And then in my extended family too, a lot of people didn't vote. So if you have this happening in several reasons, you understand, but it's going to like cut down on the amount of people. So that's why I feel, in my opinion, when I went to the polling unit, I saw a lot of people, but in the general scheme of things, I feel the amount of people that voted are less than previous.
I think that's making sense, and that's talking about in the urban areas,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. We don't know
In
what
the
happened
in the urban areas, we have reports of people, at least where I stayed, where I voted, a number of people came out to vote. Right, it was pretty impressive, but I could still see that from amongst the people I know myself,
You'll find
the
that
turnout was
significant amount of them were
has been
not
reduced.
voting.
From my own immediate family, I think out of 3 people who voted in the last elections, I was the only one to vote in this election.
Well,
Just
I
me.
don't know, but if you were to make a comparative analysis, let's not forget that this time around there are massive first
New
timers
voters,
who
yes,
came out.
definitely.
Yes,
They are
true.
first timers.
Because of the enthusiasm
and
and
that's true too.
And let's also forget the fact that our voter registration still comprises of persons who have been lost, persons who have been displaced, some actually traveled, but of course their names are still there. There's no voter registration overview or review, to sort of clean it up. So that to an extent might not give us a true data of whether there was massive turnout or not. Now again, I think the content of the election, when I say content, the contestants per se, kind of shape the voters turnout.
Yes.
Because I discovered, I don't know, from what I saw.
Okay, just go on, because we are, I was going to ask, of course, about what the causes. I was going to talk about the causes.
No, we can still come back to it again and say it fresh. Because I am just trying to say, down the south, I think people said more persons came out than usual. And down the north, fewer persons came out than usual. Now, if we want to compare to, for instance, my own region.
Yes.
Okay, let me not jump the line and say based on because I know probably I'm going to talk about the ethnic divide and all those stuff, because that also actually shaped the turnout too. And so it's more like, well, it might have been that voters turnout increased or decreased depending on the perspective from which
and also the area
too.
Yeah, one of the factors that affects voter turnout, of course, is many of the prevailing issues in the country right now, right?
There are
and then
myriads of stuff.
Yes.
Because you want to also look at the contestants,
Yes.
you want to look at competence and trust in the system, you want to look at your aspirations and if they are
yeah,
going
and
to
there's
the barriers
exactly
to
the barriers for to people coming out.
Imagine maybe
to actually vote.
An old person now, he envisions that he's going to spend 5 hours in the line. He's like,
Exactly.
nah, he's not going
Could
to
just and there are people in places that are still under
Remote.
insecurity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Places that are
But
insecure.
to
And
an extent,
compared to 2019, there are more people living under insecure
And
atmospheres
then people that are
in the
even
country.
displaced
But
from
I
their
thought
original place.
INEC claimed, I should use the word claim, to actually have envisaged that aspect too, because there was this transfer of voters from polling units.
Yes.
to
And
other
that could actually lead to low voter turnout too.
But
You
at the same
understand,
time,
right?
it could also
Because
increase.
if you move my polling unit away from
yes.
where I
No,
stay,
but credit to INEC, they said, because I remember this question was asked to the INEC chairman specifically, and he said that if those who received the messages actually read the message, what they did was move people from polling unit to another polling unit within the same assessed area.
most of what they did about that was they moved people from congested polling units to
I had
It was the
experience with
transfer,
that in the polling unit I was. Many people, like, they felt they were in the same polling unit before, but when they came, they were told that no, they are no more
part of
there.
that
They
polling.
should
Yeah, a
move
lot
to
of
the
people
next
are-
place.
but
And then when they moved there, they found that this process was significantly shorter They didn't take as much time.
Like, yeah.
They went there, voted, came back, and they were like, what's happening here? Exactly, we are still on the line.
Yeah. So I think the point I was going to make was about people who are living in insecure areas. If you move their polling units away from the area there to a different area that is perceived to be more secure, that wouldn't necessarily encourage them to go out to vote, right? So and given that we have more people living on under such conditions in this election than we have in previous elections, that could have greatly influenced the voter turnout.
Yeah, that's
because I think in 2019 and the previous election before that in 2015, it was mostly just in the northeast. But in this current election, there's the northwest, places in the north central, places in the southwest, places in the southeast, large areas in the southeast too. And then, of course, we could go ahead and talk about the stories we hear about voter intimidations in some places, of course.
Definitely.
Yes, and so
there
I think
are many things.
Yes,
actually,
I think
I feel it's an interesting point, or rather, it's an interesting topic.
Factors for
exactly.
I think that's it. As a matter of fact, it could have been predicted before it happened, before the election itself took place. This was something that could have been predicted that this could have happened. Concerns were actually raised before the elections about this issue happening. People voting.
I thought INEC said they were going to make provisions for security. Remember, in 2015, election was postponed because of security reasons.
Yes.
So there's always that interaction or communication with the security agents.
The problem with that is you're only making promises. These are people who have been living under these conditions for a long time now. And the government has made multiple promises in the past, and then they have failed them multiply. And I think that's one of the issues I even raised in the episode before this one about why people should come out and vote and why the reasons for low voter turnout in the elections. It's lack of trust in the system.
Yes.
So personally, I observed, well, depending on how you look at it, the new voters turned out massively, and that could have been responsible for what I observed in my polling units being filled with so many voters. But then locally in my own place, I find that many of the old voters did not actually turn out to come out to vote.
I don't know, but for what I saw in my own youth, of course, there were first timers who were out, but also the old ones too came out.
Yes.
Which was even surprising because
did,
we thought this was basically an election for the youths. But it turned out that it was both for the youths and even the older ones.
Yeah.
Some had to dust their voters card and they came out to vote. So it's
as much as the youth might have progressive values or liberal values, the conservative values of the older generations is as strong as the values of the youth, if not even stronger. As a matter of fact,
creates a balance.
Even just as we see with the results, as we will come to discuss.
And even generally, people are resistant to change.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes,
or
definitely.
changing of perception and all that.
Exactly.
So all those things, but it's good to have a balance. Order and chaos, right?
Exactly.
So
In terms of violence.
Actually.
all right. So I think we've spoken enough about the election day itself. Let's go on and talk about
the pre-election period, right?
Yeah, the pre-election period. So before the election actually itself took place on Saturday, campaigns all over the country has been happening for months. So given what we saw from the different contestants, their campaign activities, even prior to that, the primary elections, then after that, all the changing in parties, the relocations and translocations and defections, and all that happened with that. What were like your perceptions with that, and from your perceptions, what were your predictions, or do I say your outlooks on what you expected with the election from that? What did you see with that? Because for one, I think the campaign locally, it was pretty intense. But I remember back in 2019.
Intense. What do you mean by intense? By context?
The intensity.
Yes.
Well, for one,
violence.
Yes. The intensity of the
crowd?
campaigns.
Or is it the crowd they are talking about? The ability to pull more crowds or what?
The amount of tension
so
caused by the
by
the campaigning activities
that most likely
Yes.
erupt. Well, I don't know what before now, the intensity, maybe because I've not really been part of campaigns, we just what we see on TV and reports, and definitely, reports are basically the abnormality happening.
Yes, the
You
normality,
understand? So
they don't talk about
there are persons who go to campaign and then from their own area nothing happens, but across the border something might be happening and then they report it, and that's the only part that we see.
Okay.
Now every campaign is bound to have those chaotic scenes.
Definitely.
You will never have perfect order.
Yes.
So if it's in comparison to what has been happening before, I don't really know. It might have happened, but we don't know. But I think our focus this time around was much more on facts. I think majority were much more on facts and reality. You see, I don't know. I don't know if I speak for many Nigerians, but it has gotten to a part where we've seen life. Definitely, we've seen life. I know when people see life now, they forget whatever thing you want to tell them, and then they want resolution. Okay.
One thing I was going to drive at was this: that could it be the lack of well, it's not necessarily lack, but the reduced intensity in the campaign and in the tension. There was quite some tension. Okay,
when you say tension,
yes.
When you say tension, let's get this thing right. When you say tension, maybe it's like, okay, clash between supporters of one party
with the
and
supporters
another
of another party.
Now let's not forget that the major parties in this election, the supporters were mostly engaging via social media than physically. Of course, we had an incident here in Kano.
Yeah,
where the major opposition, if that's what you're trying to drive,
that was a couple. No, not even that. Not even that.
Okay, where the major oppositions met physically.
Yeah.
But I remember somebody once said, I don't know if it's a pastor online, they said if you've noticed, a political party comes to campaign in states, finishes, and then leaves. The next one comes.
That's what happened.
So it's more like a what do I call it? Recycling of almost same persons. You understand? So this clashes only happen when these parties come together physically.
And that's what happened.
What happened like in Kano.
That particular day.
Yes.
Exactly.
So there was like, I don't know if it was a mishap where both parties were holding.
I think that was on. Was that on Thursday?
I think
The
so.
Thursday.
Yes, that was a Thursday
before the elections, right?
And I don't know. From bystanders, it was more like they suspected, and it was more like what was going to happen was intended.
Yeah, they had
Because
already foreseen
exactly
it.
because of course the main guy was coming home to end his campaign, the last day to go to of campaign, and then the other party decided to hold a sort of. It was not really a necessary important campaign. They just had to have the gathering. And I also heard that somebody else too, is it Shaban, his name also? That he was also having his own that very day. So shops around there were even closing because they felt the tension was physical. It was going to happen.
It was going to happen.
So that was something that
was severe cases of violence.
Exactly. But if it's general, the main position and parties, there was no place. I don't know. Probably I'm not. I can't see it because we didn't hear reports.
Not everywhere.
Exactly. But it's only when there's that physical meeting and interaction that's where the tension probably would have erupted.
So I think that was one major case of pre-election violence we had in Kano State here, right? And I think there were actually some pockets of cases too before then, but that was mostly like the usual. I don't know why we've come to accept that as part of the campaign cycles.
It's not really like, I don't want to call it tension, but rather intimidation, because I feel it's different. When you have normal Nigerian citizens going about their normal duty, and then guys who are coming back from campaigns start intimidating them, collecting phones, it's not like a clash per se. It's more like, okay, these are talks of a party trying to cause mayhem.
And that's one point I was going to make actually, because one of the last episodes we did before the podcast went on the lengthy break was about the nature of Nigerian politics. I was asking the question of if the Nigerian political system, or if Nigeria is a right-wing society. And actually, I was already planning an episode for when the podcast comes back, but I think now I've actually moved it further. Yeah, maybe after our series on the Civil War, we'll actually come back to that. One of the things I was going to discuss there was about the nature of our campaign, our electoral campaigns. The fact that our politicians feel necessity, or even actually they feel free, they feel that it's necessary for them to use thugs, or at least to have a form of a militant group to either support them or to intimidate their opponents. This is a typical what is it now? Yeah, it's a typical element. It's a typical element of fascism, of fascist system, right? That's what you have in far right systems.
Yes, obviously, I can remember when I was watching a documentary on like before the ascent of Hitler in Nazi Germany, something similar to this.
Yeah,
he had
everywhere
this
you have fascism,
militant group first
in
before.
Italy.
Yes,
in Italy, Mussolini, the March on Rome. That's
Yeah,
basically what it
obviously.
was. In Spain, what's the name of the
I
Franco?
forgot. Yes,
Franco,
exactly,
yeah.
Franco. Exactly.
Same story. During the
but then
all the things that led to the Spanish Civil
But
War.
then in Africa here, would you say it's fascism or
Yeah,
it's
it actually
just,
is. It actually is because
I don't know if we should actually associate that
it
to
is
fascism
just-
per se. It's more of a political thing
something.
because
yeah,
if you want,
it's an ideology that they learnt.
mean,
For Nigeria now, for a long time,
okay.
we are Nigeria for one, for a country, and many African countries. We lived under military rule,
Yes.
and many of these military guys, these were their ideologies,
Yeah,
right? In fact, as a matter of fact, you hear of the coups that took place being carried out by military juntas, and that's a name that is used for fascist groups, of course, because yes, they are basically fascists, the military guys that led us for all those years.
I felt like maybe we just
And that's where we learned from.
we
Our
developed
politicians
it.
today, that's
we developed it.
we actually didn't. No, that's one of the things I was trying to. I've been trying to, or rather, the time that we're trying to talk about on this podcast, of course, is that many of the problems we have in the Nigerian society and in many
not
African
our
societies,
own.
they did not originate here.
I would not want
They
to,
not
I would not
originate
want to
here,
take
actually.
that stand of shifting responsibility and blames,
To other
saying
people,
whatever
right?
we have that is bad is
No,
imported.
it's not a shift of responsibility. It's actually looking
to
at
find
it
the origin.
looking at it from a different perspective. Because if one thing I've always said is that if you've always been looking at a problem in one way, and then you always end up confused, not being able to actually grasp the true nature of that problem, there's no way you can actually solve that problem in that way. Because the first step in solving the problem is actually identifying the true nature of that problem. Once you are able to grasp the true nature of the problem, you can then start to ask the right questions and come up with the right ideas to solve the problem. You understand, right?
It might be a long unending debate.
Yeah,
but I don't think, because if it's just like going back to the earliest man, did he learn from somebody else? If you are found in a situation whereby you need to survive, you will devise means to survive. Now the fact that I devise this means to survive, and you two down there you've devised the same means, doesn't necessarily mean I copied from you. Because these are guys
That's the point I'm making.
because the basic thing is Togri is just a weapon of fear.
But that's not the only way to ascend in life. It's only just a system that's developed.
When it comes to power,
It might be developed independently, as you're saying. Maybe it's developed independently. That doesn't mean it's particularly different. You might develop it and add our own elements that it will be unique.
Yeah,
So of course, not like
But you know-
the
but
system
you know
of government
what is
you
unique
practice.
too now?
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying. So it's unique because it has elements, our own local elements of our own local
Obviously.
culture and our own
And
personalities here.
everything. So
There.
that's what
But
it
it doesn't mean it's still the same thing. I don't know if you understand.
Nobody's arguing that it's not
Yeah,
the
it's
same
not
thing.
the same thing.
But what we're trying to establish here is it is probably never linked. It's not like we saw them doing it and want to do it. What I'm trying to
But it's
insinuate-
linked, actually.
What I'm trying to say here now is,
Yeah.
for instance, I think I read a book by what's his name, Green, is it Robert Green and 50th Law.
Yeah.
And then he went ahead to broadly specify how fear is being used as a tool, not necessarily by those having the gun.
Yeah.
The advert, for instance, check our basic adverts. For them to make you buy something, they want to tell you what will happen to you if you don't buy it.
If you don't buy it, yeah.
Rather than tell you just buy this stuff. So it's like fear is being used. That's why I say if you want to ascend in life, power-wise, economic-wise, you need a weapon of fear. Now, politically, maybe this is what we devised as a weapon of fear. I want to win election.
Yeah.
I need to intimidate these guys. So I get these guys to help me do this dirty job. It doesn't necessarily mean that I must have, probably, I don't know, maybe a Matawale who wants to contest for constituency election here decides to go and get talks. He has seen Kwankwaso done it. He has seen other politicians in Nigeria done it. But ask him if he knows of fascism. He doesn't.
He doesn't know the name, but the system he employs, that's what it is.
I know, let's
because
not forget-
even that he doesn't know the name
Does not
does-
mean he cannot practice it.
does not mean
Unless-
because he learnt it from somewhere,
Unless-
and that person who taught him knows fascism. I don't know if
I get your point.
No,
but, no,
the
I get
point
your
I'm
point.
making,
I get
yeah.
your point. But let me now negate my general stand view when it comes to history documentation. Now the fact that this guy has documented their history, and then it seems to or appears to have been dated before our own knowledge of it. Does not still mean that probably some of our guys.
Here's the point. That we might not be communicating clearly upon here is this: fascism. The rise of fascism is quite recent. Many of the guys who started practicing it here, right, were alive when it started happening then in Europe.
Okay.
Many of the guys who practiced fascism here were either alive or at least they were old enough to have learnt it in school.
But you have to remember,
or in military school at least.
We went like what has been discussed previously in this podcast, like history is something that goes a long way behind. So because you think it is a recent thing does not mean it's a recent thing. Maybe the ancient documentation of it.
There is a definition for fascism. I won't want us to go into that now.
So and then particularly that's not even our point of discussion.
Exactly. I wanted to say. So let's just not go.
Yeah, this is something we'll be talking about in further episodes, and we'll come back to discuss that, of course.
The results now. Okay, we're talking about the pre-election period.
So generally, the violence here was in. There was one major event, and then apart from that, it was mostly during the campaign period. We have pockets. There are talks, some terrorizing cases
of cyberbullying there.
That's one. We come back to talk about that, and then in other places too. Actually, I think there were cases, particularly when the Labour Party had their campaign in Lagos State. There were reports of certain attacks on their supporters and clashes in places. But I think apart from that, there were actually few cases.
Reported cases.
To be clear, it doesn't mean it didn't happen because
the press can't be everywhere.
I think in places like the southeast now. I'm not sure how intensive the campaign was because even prior to this,
they are already supporting a particular.
Not supporting the particular candidate. Exactly, there was skirmishes happening there. There have been violence happening there for a long time. Exactly.
So I think differentiate which is from the.
But still, there were pre-election violence there because. Of course, we heard recently. I think the assassination of the Labour Party representatives, and then there were also attacks on other party members. I think PDP, I think the driver and some other campaigners were driving the night, and then they were stopped, shot, and burnt. The same thing to the Labour. So they actually had that too in the east, particularly in Enugu. I don't know of any other place, but there were, of course, reports of pre-election violence.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, the fact
I think that was when it stated them having to do another peace accord signing.
Yeah, right.
Yes, because after those reports, they saw the
everybody will want to retaliate.
Definitely. So
they saw the need. I want to
exactly.
Yes.
So they saw the need to actually.
And I'm not sure how intense the campaign activities were in places like the southeast, for example, because of the prevailing atmosphere there prior to the elections too. Because I feel like the campaigns were quite muted over there because of how tense things were even before then.
Focus there.
Yeah. Actually, I think they did, but it went low.
Yeah, it was mostly locally organized.
Because if you notice, people were saying that all political parties were being strategic, not to have a clash with the. There's this sit-at-home order by those miscreants. So it's like they were strategic not to have campaigns on Mondays. Except I think the Labour Party agent who went for his last campaign. I think it was on a Monday, but he just went to him. He never went the normal way of campaigning. He had this way of just visit a random place and then people gather and rally about him and then he speaks to them. So I think he did that in one of their markets on a Monday, which was shocking to a lot of people. I think that actually gave confidence to most of the Easterners to come out and vote. So basically, and I think aside the ones we've said so far, the pre-election period was not
talking about the nature of power. How power is actually a figment of the imagination, right? Yeah, you just have to project it. Once you can be able to project it, then people start believing in you.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I feel we humans were meant, or rather, were designed to follow. You understand?
You are going into places. You are going into places to you pass your power. Let's not go into all that philosophical discussion now. All right. So I think so. We've talked about the vote. I think talking about the voting now, the election day itself. In many places, particularly in the north here, in most places in the north, the elections took place on Saturday and they ended that Saturday. And most people were able to cast their vote on Saturday, if not everyone, or at least a
Let's
large
say
percentage.
90%.
Most people were able to cast their votes on that Saturday, but there were places outside of, and other places in the country where the voting didn't finish on Saturday. It's overflowed into Sunday.
Yes.
And there are also places, I think some parts of the north and mostly down there, that voting continued far into the night.
Yes,
right? And then in some places it was moved over to the next day. And I don't know what mostly could have caused that. I think it was mostly because of the same issue we've talked about the the personnel, the training of the personnel, because the delay in the starting.
Exactly. First,
some places didn't start the voting till 4 in the evening. Exactly. I heard reports of that happening.
You understand? I feel there is, I don't know, in my perception, I feel there is no enough policing. You understand, of the whole situation. There are times where the crowd overwhelms the security personnel and then even the workers themselves. So they have to take some time to calm everybody down, then continue the process again.
If I may speak for naysayers, this whole thing, of course, it boils down to incompetency. But again, one thing with Nigeria, I think our political class, our political elites, they always want us to believe they are sort of incompetent as an excuse for some deliberate things they do. Because you can't tell me that you've had enough time to prepare for this thing and you didn't envisage that, okay, if you're asking these people to come by 8:30, if you are serious in this country, ordinarily your INEC officials should be given a different time, earlier time, to assemble at the meeting point.
Exactly.
Dispatch to their material so that latest by 9 they should
transportation should be ready.
Of course, these were all things prepared for,
and we have
enough financing, the logistics for transportations and everything.
Yeah.
So it beats somebody's reasonability to now feel, okay, probably INEC had issues or glitches, as they always tell us. But some other persons now, because if you watch the pattern, mostly in the north, they said it took place as of stipulated time. But then I remember I saw on TV where some persons came by 8, INEC officials were not there. Even the Director General of World Trade Organization had to tweet that she had been there. I think she came by 10 or 11. Some persons had been there by 7. And as of the time she was tweeting, which was around 2, thereabout, INEC officials were still not around. And so this was an election that was stipulated to commence by 8:30 and finish by 2:30.
In what state was that?
That's Anambra State.
Okay.
Finish by 2:30. Or if the line is long and you've been there before 2:30, then you could continue. So that the whole time was, I will at least give or take probably 6:38. If you notice, some places they have to even continue with torch lights and even car lights, because I never planned for these things. That's why I never make provisions for lights should there be election. So it boils down to,
I heard reports of people coming out with Jane too.
Exactly. So it boils down to, if we had time to prepare for this thing, this is a national stuff with the eyes of the world on it. Are we going to just allow this thing happen like that? Especially if it's not just 1 or 2 or widespread same repeated mistakes. Because I don't know, I won't want to say it's mistake. That's why I say, if I'm going to speak for naysayers, it's kind of reeks of some deliberate
you almost
effort.
want to say it's deliberate.
It's more like, don't go there on time, because these things we saw on TV where these things were taking
incompetence.
Exactly. We saw on TV where these things were taking, central bank were saddled with the responsibility of storing and then distributing these stuff. We saw on TV where things were dispatched from the main central bank headquarters to state headquarters. Some even arrived, in fact, they were all dispatched day before that stuff. So that the next morning, you only go to there or INEC office, get these stuff, and then you move. And then you now discover that in some situations whereby the persons came and picked this stuff, there are also reports of they came and then, let's say in a unit in Lagos where there were almost 1,002 plus voters. They came and the INEC officials were not there until around 2 thereabouts. When they came, so they were still waiting. When INEC officials came, they came and then they came with beavers, 2 beavers, but they were just 2 officials. And of course, the idea is we should 2:1. Where there's 1 beaver, there are 2 officials, 1 for the accreditation, 1 for the voting. So they bought 2 beavers and there were only 2 officials. So they couldn't both be operating the beavers and then voting at the same time. So they kept 1 lying dormant. Okay, now when it was time for voting, there was no ink. How can INEC not provide ink? It's just like this thing is like it reeks of deliberate.
And those are some of the
kind of reminds me of this Arsenal match where the referee forgot to draw line for offside.
Exactly.
Like that's your sole work and you are failing at that.
And you are failing at it. Then what are you telling us?
So those are some of the questions that people have raised about voter disenfranchisement and stuff like that. Those are on the part of INEC, and of course some have been on the part of state government. We have many cases, in Rivers, in Kogi, and other places like that, of course. Yeah. So there have been many cases of many such cases, many such questions raised for INEC to answer. And that's concerning the conduct. That's concerning the conduct of the election itself. So now, talking about the conduct of the post-election process, the election collation, the results transfer. So one thing that we noticed, of course, was after the closing of voting on Saturday itself, right? People were expecting the collation to start probably later that night, and we noticed it didn't start on Saturday. It was until like midday on Sunday before the collation center was opened in Abuja. Now, for one, personally myself, I would have expected that at this day and time, my own expectation was that it wouldn't be far-fetched for me to expect that INEC could have been able to implement a system in which Nigerians could have had access to live reports of the results as the voting was even taking place. It wasn't beyond them. It wasn't beyond them, because as people have been saying, or as we saw before the election, I think last year, was it last year or 2 years ago when the
electoral elections? I think
by elections. In the elections, right? The electronic transmission, electronic voting, and stuff like that.
Actually,
you saw how things went.
If we were to go by what actually, INEC, what INEC did was they raised our hopes. And then they smashed it to the ground.
Exactly.
Now, of course, most Nigerians have been yearning for that electronic kind of voting. But for now, we don't even expect INEC is going to give us that.
Yeah,
for now, we don't expect so. So what actually happened was not, because in their defense, they keep saying it, that people are mistaking electronic transmission to electronic transfer. I think the Senate president kept saying it, that when they made the act, they didn't specify electronic transmission.
Exactly.
Transfer.
Now, we are not INEC the power to actually choose what method. Yeah,
we are not not really choose. Let's get this thing right.
Okay.
We are not actually saying, because what people are saying is electronic transmission, whereas they are referring to electronic transfer.
Okay.
Now politicians are saying, no, you are saying electronic transmission, whereas what we meant was electronic transfer. So it's more like we are on the same side, but we'll choose to disagree on the terms.
Okay.
You understand? Now there's an act that requires that INEC shall, if I could even open the act, say they shall transfer copies of the collated result as polling units. So there should be that's why they call it the upload, polling unit upload.
Yeah.
The main reason why they upload it is not as if the upload was going to stand for the result. Our normal local collation will continue. The manual method.
I think that was the problem. We still voted.
That was going to be like
using ballot papers.
Definitely.
If the voting are taking place electronically, it will have been easier to.
You see, currently now we should not go. Let's not go to where we have not reached yet.
You still feel it? We still have deficient manpower or know-how in terms of that.
I listened to this. I've forgotten what's his position in INEC. Festus Keyamo.
It's not in INEC.
It's not INEC. There's
Festus
one other guy.
Festus Okoye.
Yes,
Festus
Okoye. Yeah. He was saying that the server was meant for, say, is it 2 million people?
Yeah,
and
I think
had
the server issue was they said they had difficulty in scaling.
You see, that's one thing I tell you. Nigerians, see, our political elite, they have this way of making us feel like whatever they are saying, it's because we have not reached that level yet, so we have to grant them that escape.
No, the problem with that is not even that you have not reached that level yet.
If you say
it's not like they're using local servers.
Yes,
right. It's cloud servers.
I'm not sure of what they
I should think so.
But I feel
whatever server they were using. The point is, these guys came and said the reason why this thing was not happening was because the server was not enough. At first, they even said they never had server backup or something. I don't know. But again, let's not forget that within 24 hours, these same results were being uploaded. So what actually changed within that short period of time? They never told us. And this is why that's where, when things are not transparent enough, you leave space for people to speculate and fill it off with suspicion.
Yes.
So that was what actually, because now, like I said, INEC's acts actually stipulated that you shall upload at the polling units. Now the problem now about this credibility of the election is your act you should upload at the polling units, but there were some sort of deliberate effort to ensure that upload took place at the collation centers. You understand? Now that's just
And as you know, any sort of manipulation could happen between the polling
in
unit
fact,
and the
they
polling
said
center.
where election takes place at the polling unit.
Yes.
Then where political election takes place at the coalition unit. You understand? So once the result leaves the polling unit, whatever they decide becomes the rule. You understand? And that's why they brought the beaver stuff. So that when I will finish there,
You just snap it.
we are all here, we all elected,
looking
we
at
all did the election. And these are results. We all agree, yes. Now this is a picture of it. Do we agree? Yes, we take a picture of it and we upload it. Now when you go to your coalition unit and you do your mago whatever, now when you will now publish the result, and I was there, I will be like, but this was not what we had. That's the essence of the upload. So we'll go and compare to rule out every form of rigging or whatever.
Yes.
But that was deliberately absconded because you didn't upload. Basically, almost like 90% of polling unit results were not uploaded at the polling unit. And even the recent problem between opposition parties and then the electoral coalition process was fundamentally on that point.
And that point, yeah.
That results were not uploaded at the polling unit. You know, of course, have they uploaded the result? Yes. Did they make effort to upload it? Yes. But was there delay? Yes. Were they uploaded at the polling unit? No. And now if you go to IRF, that's the INEC result, I think INEC result portal or stuff. If you go there and you check, you discover that they've been misplaced uploads.
Yeah.
A
lot of those cases.
Took a picture of himself.
There was one that they cancelled election at the place because of overvoting, and then the guy went to check at the polling unit, and then he saw result. This is in Imo State, and then he saw result of Jigawa, I think Kia or so, uploaded there. The other results were, I think another state's polling unit was uploaded on another state's polling unit. So you could just see that there was like this rush and upload. So that we'll have this stuff. So that this guy who are complaining will now go and check and then it's there. There was no effort at all to actually go through this thing and then let us see if we haven't getting this thing right. And again, that boils down to the fact that INEC didn't really prepare for this election. Or they squandered their time, because this for me is a waste of resources.
That's some serious questions that need to be answered.
While the idea of the beavers, the uploading at the polling unit is a very good idea, its implementation was very poor. This is my own perception.
It's okay, well, implementation fine, but again, as a voice for the naysayers, it was kind of deliberate. Because the beavers was meant to send automatically accredited voters. Because once you come, they check your number, they put in your VIN, and then they capture you, it counts. You understand? That's why if you go and check the result on the IRF portal, you see that where the polling unit uploaded result is, above it, the polling unit number is there, the number of accredited voters is there, you can't change it, it's there. So it automatically uploads to that place. So now when you now check some polling unit results, you now discover that even the number of voters as written, it's much more than accredited voters. So you now begin to ask questions. How managed? I heard somebody who was analyzing today on TV, and he said that we should not mistake anger for incompetence to anger for malice or so. You know, he was trying to make this idea of we should not think that what was done deliberately is an act of incompetence. Exactly. We should find a fine line between it, because how can there be incompetence when this thing is repeatedly happening? Like a wave. It's not just one polling unit, it's not 5, it's not 10. Because
if the excuse being raised here is that there were network issues, exactly how many places would have network issues at the same place? Although this also boils down to the fact that to take the place of the devil's advocate now, the INEC's excuse was that their server, the server strength. Although I think the excuse they gave was about when people were trying to check the results for the IREV, right? Well, he said the problem was a problem of scaling, and I think I understand what they were saying there. I don't know.
Based on the technological standpoint,
I think so. What they are talking about mostly was using it. That point that they are talking about cloud servers. Exactly, because they should have prepared for that.
Yes,
you should have scaled that before the election day itself.
I feel Nigeria. I keep repeating it. I feel Nigeria elite class, political class. They always that's a weapon they have against us. They make it look like we are not yet there, so excuse us. These guys are not taking for granted. And in fact, there are even reports that the guy who was in charge of the ICT, I've forgotten his name, one WAF or so. The guy has actually had this credible handling of the ICT process.
Exactly,
and that was what actually gave success to the Osun and the Anambra by-election.
Sorry, to add to that point, in 2015, right, concerning 2015 elections, but sometime after I came here in BUK, I think this was talking about in 2017 here, there was the Google I/O event in Kano here. So I happened to be one of the people that attended the event here. But one of the keynote speakers at that event, the guy's name was Taiwo. I can't remember his full name now. And he happened to be the guy that was in charge of cloud services for INEC. And yeah, he was talking about the activities, how INEC used Google Cloud Services for 2015 elections. So that was in 2015.
2015. So
right?
obviously,
So of course they have learned lessons back in 2015, 2019, and 2023. You shouldn't be having the mistakes that they're claiming they have this year. It doesn't make sense. And about the electronic transmission, the problems it was giving us, it didn't sound plausible to me, as a matter of fact, actually, because even the things they didn't do, that they were claiming, for some reason they probably have little confidence in whether it will work out or not, about the sending of result or the electronic voting itself. I feel that it would have worked. Although I understand that the electronic voting actually sends shivers down the backs of many people in high places. Yeah.
So was there electronic voting or just this same Viva system? I don't think
we've
had
electronic voting. What system was used in Oshun and
it was just
the same Viva.
The same Vivas, right?
We've not gone electronic.
It's mostly okay.
It's
So
the Viva stuff.
So mostly I think from the lessons learned then, we shouldn't have had these occurrences in this particular election.
Let's just
so those are some of the questions anyways.
Let's just call it speed. INEC.
So do we go with Sati then?
Yes.
That
INEC,
this was
engineered
engineered incompetence,
They don't have.
or do we give them the benefit of the doubt, or do we wait for the answers to come up over the next couple of weeks?
In Nigeria,
or
let me
months?
tell you something. In Nigeria, when you ask questions, they don't owe you answers.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
They owe us answers. They might feel like they don't, or they might not answer.
No, exactly. Let me point to something that happened. Sometimes when things happen like this, they say fake news. There was this news that was spread that INEC is planning not to upload results at the polling unit. It was so clear. People started posting and they were like querying and querying.
Before the elections, I think there was
November.
There was stuff that INEC is planning to not use the electronic voting at all, and they came out to
don't be using the word electronic voting, because we keep using electronic voting and they say we are
to not
even transmission,
right?
according to the Senate president, not say transmission, electronic transfer. Because you're not transmitting the result, transferring.
Should we just say electronic aided voting
whatever
process?
that is? And the point is, when the rumor started spreading, the INEC official, the INEC chairman, saw reason to knock it off. Not like he was asked specifically. He just he saw this thing, okay, this is a fake news, let's go on. He specifically used the word, forget that news, it's a fake news. We'll definitely upload result at the polling unit, because that's the game changer. You know what that means for you to upload result at the polling unit? It means that even if they rigmarole their way to change the result, you still have something to back
original
up.
copies, yes.
For something to fall back to, that is your backup, that still speaks the truth for you. Because elections are lost and won at the polling unit. And then he specified that this is the game changer, it will not change. This is on record, the video is there. Now, you said this thing, and then your act say you shall do this, which means it's binding on you. And then all of a sudden, you did not do it. Voices were raised, opposition voices were raised. Chairman, why are you not doing this? And then you said all grievances should stay put until the collation was over. Now, does it even make sense? Someone said it's more like saying, how did they even use it? It's more like saying, I will vote first, then you now accredit me.
Later.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
We are bringing a case that this should come before this, and you've not done this. Why are we going ahead with this? We are saying, no, let us finish this, then we'll come back to this. Now, result has been announced.
So that was the point that was being raised by the opposition, of course.
Yes.
With the press
Now, result has
conference
been
and
announced. Certificate of return has been returned, but INEC chairman has still not made any statement on that.
about that.
Now, people are saying probably he might still make, there's still time frame. Now, what's the essence of him coming to make it now? Because what we see now is a deliberate effort to rapidly upload the results, which actually stirred the complaints.
Yeah, to answer some of that question, any clarifications that come up now could then aid with, because definitely the way things are shaping up now, you might have some really some tribunal court cases leading from this. So any clarification that come from INEC now will aid, of course, in all those processes.
Building up in case.
If INEC own up to their responsibility with the way things are in this country, with as vital, as important, permit me to use that tautologous word, as vital as this exercise is, do you need time before you give us a reply? It doesn't really make
They need to understand exactly what happened. Well, supposing
let's
it wasn't
acting.
engineered, of course.
Let's stop
They
acting.
need time to understand exactly what happened, the points of failure, and then they can present that to the public, and then the public can act on that.
Let's stop acting as though INEC is a body made up of a single individual. These guys, they have branches, they have directorates. While we are here collating results, we should have our engineers checking this thing. How long will it take engineers to fix up, okay, what actually happened? We are not saying fix this problem for now, but tell us what actually happened.
The problem with that will be coordination.
They've not given reason.
Yes, because as the engineers are working on the back end, there need to be a way for them to coordinate with people in the field. That's the personnel in the field. If there is an essential problem with the back end, they will need to talk to people in the field in real time for them to stop uploading for some time, for them to fix that problem before they continue the voting. If that doesn't happen, the premier is that all that should have happened before the voting itself.
No, they cried.
have been a test run.
Exactly, something like that.
They did also. That's in fact they used the what they call it, the Osun.
That was a test run for the system, and it worked well. No, there should be a test run for the presidential election to see that their system was working well.
They did mock voting. They did mock voting. Yes, they did. Saturday before the election, they did mock voting, and they told us they were good to go. This whole thing. See, this point is we're not trying to say what is happening, fix the problem now. It's just like my car breaks down. I call the mechanic. Once the mechanic look at the car, what do I expect him to tell me? Your car has this issue. It's something that's happening. Doctors in the hospital, a patient comes to you. You don't treat the patient immediately and say, go, this was your problem. You first of all find the problem, tell the patient this is your problem, and then this is what we're going to do. Now, when I come crying to you, I'm feeling headache, I'm vomiting, I'm having stomach pain. What is the problem?
So instead of telling me going ahead with collation, you should have sorted out the irregularities
more like saying,
before collating the results.
Let me go and get you drip. Let me get you blood. Let me get you diazepam. Let me get you this and that. Then I will not come and check.
Because it doesn't make sense. This is leading now from the concerns raised by the opposition parties is that the results collated by the INEC now are largely under question.
It is clearly under question, even by the very act of INEC.
The thing they are saying is that since this upload at the polling unit is supposed to be a fact check, you understand, such that when you are saying something you can fact check it with that. But then that in itself is not available. It did not happen, and it's not available, and even when it's available it's not accurate, you understand. So how can we question what we are saying when what we're supposed to be as a fact check is not there?
The uploading of the result from polling unit gives credibility to this election. Exactly. And then you've eroded this, and then you are people asking questions, and you're keeping them mute. Now, okay, let me even take the side of INEC. INEC was saying that if you have any grievances, you have evidence, bring it out. Now, I heard a legal practitioner who was trying to query that statement. If you have evidence, you've been complaining. If you have evidence, bring it out.
The evidence, the INEC is the custodian of the evidence. Exactly. So it's more like the ones to bring it out themselves.
Exactly. It's more like you telling me, it's more like, doctor, I'm having catarrh, I'm having cough. Doctor will not tell you that, okay, come, let me check. But how do you know you're having cough and catarrh? Show me evidence. Doctor should be the one to have taken a test and then give me evidence.
As a doctor,
so it doesn't really make sense exactly for you to now be asking
the patient only
the
report
complainants to come and tell you, give me evidence. So that thing, it's childish. Again, it boils down to the fact that INEC keeps dipping its hand into some complicity. It's more like, I don't think this is beyond incompetence. This is more like something deliberate. Of course, I am not among those who want to just be propagandists and stuff. But come on, except we just want to claim not to be reasonable enough. Okay, this thing beats reason.
So we've talked about the conduct of the result and the various failure points by INEC and their officials. Talking about, but there are multiple points of failure here, or at least multiple fault points in this election, not just with INEC. I think talk about one of the sources of dilemma for many of the voters. I know I suffered from this myself prior to the election itself, prior to the election day, was the issue of the candidates, right? Yeah, the candidates, for one, we've always had this problem in Nigeria, of course. We do not have enough diversity in the candidates in terms of their ideology. And this is something that people have always pointed to as the cause or the reason why people resort to voting along tribal, ethnic, or religious lines in the country.
I feel, I don't know, I've seen something, people saying that maybe we are not mature in our democracy enough for us to have that kind of. But I'm not sure. I'm not like, I want to do more research into like the origin.
That's not true, is it? The problem is not the problem of the maturity of the democracy. It's
more of what? The candidates themselves?
No, it's a societal issue.
No, it's more of the candidates themselves.
It's societal issue is because of it's the system. So maybe we could go ahead with
one thing with Nigeria. I think
that
our history so far points to the fact that we must fall back to ethnic
or religious. Yes, like
there's always been that mistrust. There's ethnic mistrust, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, definitely.
I go somewhere. In fact, let me be frank with you. Before this election, if you noticed, friends around me, they noticed, I never came out, probably through social media, to broadly and then obviously say, this is my candidate, except few days to the election. And my dilemma was more like, I fully wish I was not my tribe supporting this tribe man, or my candidate was not the tribe that I happen to be. Because by the time I come out to sell this guy at first glance, they will attach him. Of course, we know.
And I think I had that issue too, of course, because when I engage in discussions with people about my outlook on the election, and people ask, okay, I know this is the guy you're voting for. I ask, okay, wait, why do you think that? Is it because is my tribal guy? They say yes. I say, well, it turns out it's not even my second choice. Yeah. It's not even going to be my third choice, right? There's no way I'm going to vote for this guy. And they ask why. I say, okay, for this reason. As a matter of fact, I didn't have any particular candidate I was going to vote for until a day to the election. That was when I was able to make up my mind.
I had a candidate I was going to vote for last election before this time. Because I felt, if we are serious in this country, we'll look at people who are competent enough.
Yeah.
People who have done this stuff. People who are ready to fight the system. It's not easy. I will not
don't have anybody who's done this stuff.
I gave up on Nigerian political system. And then this somebody who came and then renewed hope. Yes, we are not always like them.
Okay, so here now we're going to talk about the candidates. For now, okay, let's talk about the candidates. I don't know if we should talk about the candidates and the results they achieved at the same time, because previously I wanted to talk about their chances or what you saw as their chances before, but then given that we kind of running out of time now, we just want us to round up the whole thing and talk about what you saw as their chances and then the results and how it reflected after the election. So, talking about the candidates for the election and what we saw as their chances beforehand, and from the results, as we've seen, of course, following the announcement by INEC, I would like us to talk about the distribution of the vote distribution. For one, at first, the result that was announced, what you see as the announcement, I feel like
does it reflect the choices of the people?
No, for one, I see people. I've seen people making allusions about the results, either reflect the choice of the people or not. It does not. I can't answer that question because I can't speak for everybody. What I can speak for is this: objectively, from my perception, right? Of course, I observed the campaigns. I saw the campaign processes, the campaign activities of every single one of the candidates. I saw the where they concentrated much of their effort. I saw their allegiances and everything like that. So, and we all saw that, right? So the thing here is, objectively speaking, given the way the distribution of the result, I don't know if you feel like the distribution of the result announced that we saw after the elections, does it reflect what would have been objectively predicted from observations of the campaign process?
First and foremost, campaign, trying to analyze results based on campaign, it's flawed, because it's not by turnout at campaigns. I'm not talking about turnout in campaigns. I'm talking about the things that happen, the overall atmosphere. You should try to understand what I'm saying. Okay, let's see now. Maybe I should clarify. I should give my own opinion on that before. Yeah. Okay. Now, what I mean is the overall prevailing atmosphere all over the country, not just
in places visited by each candidate, or in the regions they visit, or not even necessarily the allegiances they form. So for one now, if I should discuss, for example, the candidate of the ruling party, if you look at the results, he got the majority of the votes from the southwest.
Yes.
He did well also in the north. He didn't win many states in the north, but he did well. The states he did not win in the north, he came close second. Right?
Yes.
In the southeast, he lost pretty massively, yes. Right? But not terribly.
Yes, that's it.
In places too, right? And so now, looking at that, if you are to have judged prior to the election itself from the polity, the atmosphere in the country, I don't think the results he achieved would have been different. I don't think it would have been different from what could have been predicted. Yes, we know he has quite a good standing in the southwest. Yes, of course, Lagos was shocking, and we all know the Labour Party. Labour Party had a very strong movement in Lagos, so that could have been expected.
There were prior wars of the ruling party, particularly
in Lagos,
and that would incite people.
But elsewhere in the southwest,
yes.
we know the candidate of the ruling party had very good standing there, yes. And following the elections, we saw in the results how he cleared most of the states.
I think
right?
It was only one that he had an upset.
Yes,
Osun.
Okay,
so two.
Yeah, I think
if you add
Lagos and Osun, yes, but everywhere else he cleared it. And then coming to the north, he won a couple of states, yes. And then all the other states that he lost, he came close second. And then yes, that could have been expected too.
Yes,
that's
definitely.
I don't know if it makes sense, right?
States that he did lose.
Yeah, there were upsets. But even in the upsets, he did well. He came close second. Yeah. So I think from that, it could have been expected, right? The result isn't actually too far from
what was maybe predicted.
Yes, what could have been predicted objectively.
Now let's face what actually happened. Definitely by alliances, by handshake across Naija and the stuff, the result reflects what this guy actually put in. But again, let's not forget, of course, let's say putting aside the legality of the result so far, because it is like I don't want to use the word scam, but it's somehow shocking, or it will be shocking to reasonability to say the ruling party won in a place like say Rivers State.
Yeah, I was going to come around to that, of course, about outliers, because of course we couldn't have it 100% fair election.
Definitely, even if you see the pattern with which he won,
yes,
it tells you something about comparatively to what has been the voting nature in that very state.
Yes,
in terms of the number, in terms of their direction, that's political affiliation, in terms of actually the true yearnings of the people. Again, it still boils down to, I don't know if you notice, I'm being reluctant to want to compare what actually happened as compared to the result and stuff. Why?
That's what I'm not talking about what actually happened. I'm saying from the result and what could have been objectively
it's more
predicted.
Like, in law they said you don't build legality on nothing.
Yeah.
Because now if we are saying this election had some one or two issues which is making the legality to shake, of course we know that there are tensions. There are people who say we don't accept this result. There are people who say if you don't accept it, go and seek redress and stuff. Now if you want to now use this to make comparative study, it's like you need to found it on something that is strong. Because now if I now say, okay, yes, this guy won in the southwest, you understand? He won in the southwest. Definitely, he was bound to win the southwest. Now, again, let's not forget that the results that we have, there are reports of government house interference. For instance, the Rivers State election. Now, we hear wide reports of governor's hand in it directly. And let's also not forget the fact that the ruling party candidate actually shook hand with this guy.
Yes.
Almost towards the end of pre-election period.
Yeah, we know.
So now we cannot just close our eyes.
Exactly.
Now we cannot just
of the opposition.
Now we just can't close our eyes to these incidences and then focus primarily on the result. It will not be fair enough. It will not make a fair judgment of
Yeah.
the
So
results.
the reason I brought that up was that about the issues that have been prevalent online. Although I'll come to address that shortly, about the results we had, like Sati hinted at a while ago, about the results being a reflection of the people's choice. Was it really a reflection of people's choice? So I'm trying to say, okay, the results we saw that were announced, that we are working with now, is it that different from what could have been objectively predicted?
If you follow polls, and let's not forget that. Okay, polls might not always be correct.
Exactly. The point that is okay.
But
talk
if you
about
have
the
polls,
polls,
exactly. If you have a poll, for instance, now that gives you consistent positive results.
As this thing I was going to raise with that. Now, with polls, most of the people who are going to respond to polls or search polls, of course, are going to be people in urban areas, right? Now, most of Nigeria's population do not live in urban areas. This, as a matter of fact, this was one of the issues I was going to raise about the failures of the opposition.
But like I said, we're not just talking about one poll. And most of these polls, they consider, in fact, another poll, for instance, they consider majority of their votes, of their sample size from rural areas. Why? Because they feel this is the political grassroots.
Yeah.
Now, another poll had been correct for a period of, I think it has been having consecutive wins until this election. Now, again, there was this poll of turnout. This whole thing, if you put all these things together, the results actually went against the majority of polls. If this poll had been consistent based on their sample size, and then all of a sudden maintaining same sample size, maintaining same collection method, and then the result turns out different. You understand?
So
it's more like exactly. Now, I'm not saying I always want to be the naysayer in this discussion, but nonetheless, it's more like, okay, this result went against the polls. But we're not talking about just one poll, we're talking about different polls. Now, compare that with the mood of the announcements. Of course, I can't say I've seen a lot or I can sample it, but I remember vividly 2015 when President Buhari was announced to winner. The celebration among majority of Nigeria was palpable.
Yes.
So to say. In 2019, when he also won, the celebration was still palpable. Now, in 1999, I will never forget I was a kid. I remember when Olusegun Obasanjo won overwhelmingly, the celebration was palpable. Except for 2011, where of course the election was marred with chaos and stuff down here in the north, but some places in the south, the celebration was also widespread. But this election so far, from what we have seen on reports, the celebration has not been as palpable as it used to be. In fact, the mood has actually been different.
Yeah.
Now, the idea is, compare what we are seeing now to videos we saw at polling units, different polling units on social media. It's more like the people's choice is different from what actually happened. Let's not forget that the party that emerged has the power of incumbents. Now, of course, I want to say even the incumbent power was but no, it's still the incumbent power. And they had that power of incumbency. Because when you had governors interfering with results, you're definitely exercising incumbent powers.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm going to follow naysayers again, of course, okay, if you are saying incumbent power, this guy lost Lagos, the president lost Sokoto. I always say this thing, and I keep saying it. Nigerian political elite, if they want, I don't know why people see it as propaganda, but if they want to scam us, they do it in such a way whereby we feel like these guys are not smart enough to do this thing, so we give them an excuse. Whereas they know what they're actually doing. I'm not going to say, I can't even say this result is rigged, but based on the result we are having so far, the idea is we can make substantial analysis on the grounds that it is still having one or two shaky legs, just like the one in the Port Harcourt and even some places down there in the east. And that's why I think a political party now are asking, not just one, I think probably two of them, opposition parties are asking all their agents and members who were at polling units to send pictures of what they do, so that they will compare it with what is on IRF, and you could see discrepancies widespread. So that again makes you to understand that, okay, can we be able to use this result to make substantial comparative analysis? don't really think it might be well meaningful.
So that's also something to part of the questions, of course. Part of the faults of INEC with the whole process was now if the whole thing had worked, because now with political parties submitting individually their own what they say is the results or the picture of the result taken by their own agents. I don't know how trustworthy that could be now. You understand, right? So
are we looking at pictures that could be edited?
Yes, now because you are taking picture of a document.
Are low, but then
it's possible. So I think so. Except if you do things like looking at the exif information of the pictures and stuff like that. But that could be edited also.
But let's not forget that these are documents that have seal.
Yes, and then they are handwritten.
Exactly.
Then you cannot never say never.
You can't exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, definitely.
So the best thing to have happened was if it had worked. If it had worked originally. So
the whole blame falls back to INEC.
Exactly. That's the same time I'm saying that about INEC having so many questions to answer with this. So Muri, to ask you the same question now, the results we saw.
Yes.
That was announced and that we're working with now. Does it reflect, or do you think it reflects what could have been objectively predicted?
Yeah, actually, I do think it's not too. The result that has been announced might not be as far-fetched as it seems. The reason because I feel, based on the political climb, based on my own understanding, I feel the opposition was disjointed, and then that was what was capitalized on
and we
by
are going
the ruling party. You understand?
That.
That's why I feel it might, there's a lot of things that you say were wrong with the election, but because of this, that's why I wouldn't say the result is too far-fetched than what might have actually happened.
Okay, if I stand as devil's advocate, there's this, just like you pointed out, there's been this reason that the opposition were divided. And then if you look at it, was the opposition really actually divided? Of course, Obi was from this party.
This was sorry, please. You'll continue with that. I just want to clarify all that, please. So this was one of the things I was going to talk about the problems or the failures of the opposition, or the various opposition. Now here is the thing. Prior to this election, we had two major parties, only two major parties, APC and PDP, right?
Yes.
Now, with the primaries, when the primaries took place, the pre-primaries, it split the party. Now, the three major opposition candidates we had in this election, we are all part of the PDP.
Yes.
Let's not also forget that these guys were once in APC.
That of course comes down to the failure of the Nigerian political system. Because now this was the source of the dilemma for many voters. Yes. In fact, it's one of the reasons I almost did not vote myself, but I had to, because I had to practice what I preach, of course. Exactly. Now, all these candidates, at some point, we are together at the same political party. They all, as a matter of fact, one of my major gripes with the campaign process was that these candidates all have the same ideas about how to solve the issues of the country. The same ideas that have been repeated over and over again in time past. The same ideas that at times have been practiced and have been shown to fail. And they still keep saying the same thing again. Right? Now, so...
Okay, when you say these guys were from the same political party, now it boils down to the position of the electorate, the voters themselves. Do we vote based on political parties or based on individuals?
That's a case of one of the failures, of course, with the system. Is now I think with the Nigerian system, actually now in the Nigerian constitution, and I don't know with the guidelines and how these things take place. Or for example, in the ballot paper we used to vote. It's the party that are rating. It's the party that's there. And of course, there have been these various debates about when lawmakers were defecting from one party to another. There was a debate about a senator. Yeah, exactly. About do you depose the person after he defected to a different party because the party was elected, not the candidate.
And then the person that is written on the form
was not a present member of the
NPP. He's like, he has won. We don't care. He's the winner. You understand? That's the case that's
happening. So in the Nigerian system, we don't know exactly. Are we voting the party or are we voting the person? Although that's a different thing entirely.
Let's not act like we don't know what we are voting. In Nigeria, parties don't have policies. It's individual.
That's
one.
That's the
We're
failure.
not as
That's one of the. I think that's one of the
We're
reasons.
not as developed
That's
as
one
US,
of the,
for instance.
no.
You say
See,
we are aligned based on
our system.
principles.
Our system has not been that developed, of course, and that's because as it is now, it favors the people. Right, the people, these politicians particularly, that are exploiting the system, it favors them. For the parties do not have particular policies, because then it gives them the freedom of this fluidity. So if they feel like the party is not exactly, is not aligning with their own personal interest, they can jump ship to another party.
Let me also point something here. You see, when people go to vote, we Nigerians, we hardly take our time to read and analyze
the parties, and then
so we just what
they say,
we just go along that one.
Yes.
But if we actually follow, okay, this is it. Most of us we are attracted to the individual than even the party.
Okay, now
and that's why
going with that now.
That's why political elites, the way they are important based on their followership. Yeah. That's why you now hear that if this guy leaves his party, he's going to leave with a lot of followers.
Let's do all what we want.
Sati, going with that with the matter of say voters voting according to what the politicians say, right? According to their personality, their competence and stuff like that. From what was said in this campaign process, right? Did you perceive much of a difference between the different candidates?
No,
yes,
honestly,
me personally, yes.
I mean, there was differences. There were differences in their fluency, right? In their coherence.
Yes.
In their coherence, there was differences.
Okay, mind I ask, did you go through their manifestos?
That's the same thing I'm saying now. The manifesto, the things they were saying.
You went through the manifesto, 3 of them.
Yeah, for the most part, yes.
Me, I went through the LP candidates and the APC candidates.
Okay.
Now, if you had gone through the manifesto, it's not like as though everything were the same.
Yeah, of course, you can't copy and paste.
The major thing is approach.
Yeah,
it's different. Let's not forget the approach is different. Why this guy is saying we'll open your pot, we'll do this one for you, we'll do that one for you. You try to check, is he really capable of doing it?
Yes.
That's it. That's one thing. That's why I say most of us don't read my first one analyze.
Yeah.
You just read it and then what did they say? Ask most of the people who voted, what did they say? If you notice this time around, this was an election whereby persons were much more interested in what you wanted to say, to attract them to vote for you, than just coming to do your normal political rigmarole and dancing.
Yeah.
I remember some guys who were actually strong supporters of the incumbent party were angry when the candidate came to Kano and then all he said was he wanted to come and dance. He never made any comment as to whatever his plans were for Kano. And the guy was infuriated. He felt that he had been treated as a second-class citizen.
Yeah.
And because of that, he did not vote. You understand?
Yeah.
So this is more like we are coming here to listen to you. Now, if we are that kind of voter, which is majority our nature as Nigerian voters, we only go to campaign, listen to what they say. And basically, these guys just come and summarize their manifesto. And when you summarize your manifesto, it will all sound the same thing. It's not light. We'll give you 24 hours of light. Yeah. We'll do ensure to increase megawatts. But how do you intend? You don't expect a candidate to come here now.
Yeah, but the thing is,
give you
it is one of your assignments. One of the assignments you have to do as a candidate, as a political candidate, is to be able to effectively communicate your plans for the people to them.
Let's not forget that.
And you shouldn't expect that the common man, given the Nigerian system now, exactly, the common man cannot go and open your manifesto and understand what you are.
Let's not forget that manifestos are not 5 to 7 pages documents.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So you should be able to communicate effectively.
How else do you want to communicate a 68, 71, 100 page document to persons who will come and stand for you in short period of time without actually summarizing it in a way that it will sound similar to the other guys?
That it is not only at campaigns these guys were able to talk about their listing. They had cases where they would be interviewed on TV.
Yeah.
How many of them actually go for interviews?
Yeah, but
and even when they go for let's not act like let's keep political correctness aside. You see Nigeria, most of our interviews in Nigeria, aside from what is happening recently, I remember before then I hated Nigerian interviews, especially on NTA, because it was more like pre-doctored. You just come and then you say, I want you to ask me my name and my age.
Exactly.
And then you sit down and then they ask you your name.
And
then you now keep quiet and try to do as if you are thinking question that you have been anticipating. It's just bullshit. Because I don't know, it's like our media guys are scared of, these are the top guys. That influence is still there. You know, so most times when these guys go for interview, they don't tend to ask them questions, grilling questions. Except, of course, recently that the trend is going to change, definitely. Yes. But the thing still boils down to the fact that when we want to say we are talking about the failures of opposition. I want to make categorically clear that number one, we in Nigeria, we don't vote basically on political party lines. That's one. Two, when you talk about you're trying to make points that the PDP was divided, you know, that these guys they were divided. G5, right? No, not really G5. The opposition parties now. Yes, you know, so it's more like you're sounding as though when this guy was leaving, he was taking a part of the voters of this party away. A part that is not really true. Yeah. That's not really true. Why? Because number one, people who vote are not card-carrying members. They're not party card-carrying members. That's one. Two, me for once in 2019, I never knew who to vote for. Because none of the it still boils down to the fact that we vote based on individuals. Yeah,
I think we none of the individuals in this election. Exactly. 2019 was probably worse.
Yeah. Exactly, because none of the individual actually suited what I wanted. So I abstained from voting. And this is the same idea of many persons. That's why this time around, persons who before now had only used their voter's card for bank identification and stuff, decided that let us put to good use this thing for what it's meant for. You know, so it's more like we saw somebody that we are attracted to. We don't even care his party. This party is just a party that started it's not really that started, but the party started gaining weight almost like 8 months ago because this guy came in. So it's not like it's not like we have been Labour Party followers and this guy came and then
now
PDP Party followers this guy came
let's now one of my major inspirations for doing this episode, the podcast of course has a goal. Yes. The goal is to educate, inform, and discuss issues in a particular way. Yes. So, of course, these are some of the discussions you have to bring. There are multiple discussion points you could bring up for the other parties. Yes. But one of the important parts for any political party that I picked out, that I observed in this election, during this election cycle, is that of the obedience movement. It's a very important thing. It's something I think we might have seen examples of it before, but it's particularly not in the recent times. This is something
have you actually had?
We have.
Which
what? Have you had any movement like this?
No, not as much as this, but this political fervor. You understand?
Not the political fervor. I'm talking about the movement itself.
It's about the movement itself.
Yes.
Okay. Like
exactly.
Let's.
So
it's okay.
So I'm not intending to do any particularly intensive discussion on the movement itself now.
What the idea should be is, this election so far, what is the take home? It's more like something that is unique.
Not even something unique particularly. Now, the results, at least the preliminary results, have been announced.
Yes.
We've had a winner, and what I want to discuss about it is this. So let me just put it out there, of course, and then you can say if you agree generally on it or not. So there are some particular things, points that I could point out as points of failure for the movement that could have resulted in what turned out in the results of the elections. So part of it was in no particular order. So one, we have like the little time for the
movement.
The little time given for the movement. The little time the movement had to prepare for the elections, right? And that, of course, could be said to be the cause of things like, for example, the lack of widespread support, particularly in many regions outside of the southeast, for example. You could see the movement actually performed abysmally in the north.
In the core north, yes.
You see in the north, generally in the north, and then even in the southwest.
Maybe I should clarify something first.
Yes.
It's quite unfair to make the whole movement, to attach the movement to some ethnicity. Why?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm coming there. I was going to talk about this. Now, the support for the movement cut across many ethnic groups, of course, right? You saw how strongly the movement was in parts of the southwest, but still, in the elections, we saw how the opposition really beat it in most of the parts of the southwest.
Again, it still boils down to the fact that can we use this election result as substantial analysis?
So I'm making the assumption now that we could.
Okay, now because
That's the assumption I'm making.
Even for what you said before, you were trying to say, okay, one of the reasons why the movement didn't actually succeed that much was short period of time. Because and I'm tempted to ask, these guys intend to go to court.
I'm not done with that now. I was going to just analyze it, and then you can say if you agree with my analysis or not. So the point is short duration, and then that led to stuff like, okay, there wasn't enough time to actually get widespread support from different parts of the country, particularly in rural areas. So the way it looked from the result was like the Labour Party didn't have very little result, if at all, in places outside of city centers, in most parts of the country, outside of the southeast. You understand? So it had very little support in places outside of major cities. So given that it was a movement that was centered around youth and youth participation and youth vigor and youth enlightenment, right? That if there had been more time, so I don't know if time itself now is to be blamed for this now, but the fact that for a movement that was centered around youth participation, there was actually I didn't see things like trying to recruit youth, for example, or having something like a volunteer force. You understand? Volunteer force for the movement. Yes. Now that's when you could have like people volunteering to do like various jobs for the party that's
basically based on. That's what
yes.
basically built on.
What was like built, that's what was built on, right? But you see, and that's what accounted for its success in places where it succeeded, particularly in the southwest. So I believe if it had either had more time, or if
will have been spread.
Exactly, or if it had been open enough for that. I don't know. That's why I said I don't know if time itself is what's to be blamed for this, or if it was something else, or if it was some oversight.
Number one, considering the short duration of time, these guys deserve more credit than even exactly.
Yes.
Now let's not forget. I wanted to even point this before. I don't know. It skipped my head. A full analysis of election is taken after election matters are finally settled, including legal matters. Because now, if you want to give kudos to this guy, or if you want to score them, whether to score them high or low, we have to wait until the election matter is finally settled. Because now, if you say these guys came to this election, and then tomorrow now the judge or whatever magical whatever happens, and then finally they regain the seats, you have to now review and reassess what you scored them. Yes. You understand? That's one. Two. Now, if you say that they don't have widespread to probably local areas, only city centers, I don't think that is fair enough for these guys. One, let's not forget that these guys, they went far and wide. The candidate of the Labour Party did campaigns in hitherto ungoverned areas now, people have never been to. This
was the same point you raised, and you said this was earlier on in the episode that you can't judge using the number of the crowd you see in campaigns. That doesn't determine how people's allegiances will be during the election.
That is to the result. Let's get it clear. That campaigning numbers, it's in comparison to the result. But you brought a point of spread. Spread is not results. Spread is that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. The widespread support.
Spread is about who knows this guy, who doesn't know this guy. Yeah. It's not about who voted for him, who doesn't vote for him.
But yeah, you are making my point now about people who know the party and what the party stands for. Yeah. You understand? Like the party I don't believe the party did not have enough time, or maybe did not have enough reach to actually build that support.
No, what I'm trying. Let me land. You are trying to say that these guys are not known in rural areas, for instance, just city centers, probably because of short time frame.
Probably.
Yes.
Right. So I'm not clear enough on that. Right.
Now I'm trying to make you understand that. Let's give kudos to these guys, because even in rural areas, he is still known. Now, how well is he known in rural areas depends on perspectives.
No, here's the thing, right?
You've not been to rural areas.
Flowers. Talking about giving flowers. See, the campaign was friggin' impressive. This campaign was impressive, and it's reflected in the election result, at least the one we have now that we're working with. I don't know how, from historical perspective, I don't think we've ever had anything like this before, right? Somebody building from scratch in under a year, and then achieving what he achieved, almost upsetting the major parties.
Yes,
it's freaking impressive, and that's not the result. During the campaign itself, the rallies he had were impressive. The places he was able to go to, he was able to even blaze trails, go to places before any other of the candidates could go there. He campaigned in the core north, visited rulers in the north, was received with wide arms in places in the north that you wouldn't have expected him to be able to get to or to have access to. It was impressive. His marketplace storms, right? Those were brilliant campaign strategies. You understand, right? But of course, the people who will be influenced by those campaigns, and the people who were influenced particularly, because yes, people were truly influenced by those campaigns, right, are mostly people who had access to information and who stayed in major city centers. And that's the point I'm making, right?
That's what I'm trying to make you understand, that there's a place in Borno South.
Yeah.
He told us before now, people hardly go there to campaign. But he went there. Go there to and ask, have you known of Peter Obi? You don't tell me that these people don't know of him. And these are villagers who they don't have access to the city center. They are not in the urban areas. They don't have access to your media, whatever, but they know him. So the idea of widespread is only limited to the urban center. It's flawed. That's what I'm trying to say. Places like the southern Gombe, these are local areas. These are villages. He went there. In fact, there was one area he went to. They said they've never had water. Car never drove into that place. I don't know how true it was, but he went there. Even against advice from his his advisors and stuff. He went there because this was somebody who was wanting to win an election. He knows fully well that election is won at the grassroots in rural areas.
True.
He made those movements. So it's not as if we just sit down and say, because we saw him in TV in Alaba, Lagos, Okigwe, Onitsha, in Kano Central, that means it's only limited to the central areas. No. This guy made widespread. Yes, he has short time. He still made that effort to rural areas. Again, if you are trying to judge how well he is known, even in rural areas, based on the outcome of the election, that will be flawed. That's what I'm trying to say. That will be flawed. So the main thing is, if you are talking about, okay, you are trying to limit, okay, he had short time. Probably that was why he didn't spread. Yeah, I'm trying to make you understand now that even with the short time, he actually did spread.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much spread would have been needed for him to have said he actually had the spread. It's amazing that when you travel, I was moving down the road the other day,
Sati,
and then some men came from villages.
You did see the results.
Wait,
you did see the results from the north, right?
Sir?
The results from northern states.
Yes, I saw it. Again, it still boils down to this thing is still, they have reports now on video record. Except you claim that those videos were doctored. Some places in Borno South, they said they never had election materials brought to them.
Okay.
The same thing too in Bauchi South. No election materials brought to them.
And
these guys are making claims.
There are the reports of states in which the Labour Party's logo was not on the ballot paper.
So these are their own. These are
we saw one such message.
Exactly. Yeah. So these are their own excuses that okay, this is why probably the result will not reflect how well we are known. You don't take that away from them. That's why I say you don't use the result. I'm not taking it away.
Exactly. I'm only saying from what you've seen,
but you don't use the results still to judge their popularity in rural and local areas. That's the major thing.
Do you feel now, for one, Sati, that do you feel that analysis to be wrong now, that he might not be well known in rural areas, particularly in rural areas in the north, for example? For you to ascertain, could it be perhaps just settle this for once and for all, that could it be that perhaps he's well known, just not well accepted?
Could that
be it?
No, let me answer
I think
now.
That might be it.
Now, for you to make such an assertion, you need to be sure of what you are saying. Because if you say, okay, you've conducted a poll, fine. Now I will tell you from my own perspective, which you do from your own perspective.
So Sati is basically being the scientist here. Yes. If you don't have the evidence,
exactly.
If you don't have the data,
don't hypothesize.
Exactly, that's true. Because from one perspective,
hypothesize only with evidence, and then lay down your theory.
From the right areas.
All right, Sati.
We were shocked they were talking.
I doff my hat to you. You are the scientist.
So we were shocked that they were talking about Peter Obi, and it was amazing. All right, you don't make that assertion.
All right, then I think I get your point, and it makes sense. All right, I think I want us to conclude here, but of course, it won't make sense for us to conclude like that. This election, we are talking about this election. We're not talking about the drama we've seen online. This has been happening before the election itself, and it's gotten only worse after the election. During the collation process and stuff like that. So we saw major cases of misunderstandings, of stereotyping and collective abusing of entire groups of people, and then there have been defenses and counter abuses and counter stereotyping, and it's been very messy online in these past few days. it's been a very messy process, very messy time for Nigerians in the Nigerian airwave, Nigerian online space. Yes.
As either you identify whatever
Now,
method of identification.
Yeah, I've been thinking for these past few days about the result and the fallout. And one thing that actually really resounds with me, and that's even, like I said, one of the things that even made me want to feel like I had to make this episode instead of the previously planned episode, was yes, this drama has been happening online. And one thing that's been resounding with me is the denial from different parts, especially, but not just, yes, we know this is typical of the politicians themselves, but I'm talking about the followers now, the supporters, the denial and the refusal to acknowledge some facts, right, and to be actually fully rational about matters, right. We've discussed here, for one, the irregularities with the election and where those faults could lie and where those could have resulted from, but those do not account for the messy situation of what we've seen online so far. And I feel like I said, you've seen the denial of the causes of the causes of failures, right, at the polls. The refusal to actually acknowledge the differences that could actually cause it, or the differences that could have caused the way vote distribution or the way the vote distribution occurred during the election. Of course, right? Like people just plainly refuse to acknowledge. Okay, if this happened, let's say if this was the result we get from this place, could there have been? Yes, exactly.
But you have to understand. You understand me based on my own perception of what I saw with everything that's happening online. When you someone maybe it's on the losing end, you are not always rational. You understand? So
and
I feel
the second part of my point here is that there is a refusal on the part of one side to acknowledge the fact that can be responsible for what they are seeing, and then there is a refusal on the other part to acknowledge the invitation to introspection, right? Like you say, why don't you just introspect? This is an electoral process. This is a democratic process. Nobody can actually force you to choose a particular candidate. Okay. But at least if you're going to vote a particular candidate, at least be introspective as to the particular reason why you are actually voting that. If you're going to be voting along tribal lines, then you of course do not come and try to be defensive when someone accuses you of doing that, of nepotism, because that's actually what you did. Nepotism, right?
You wanted your own
sentimentality,
and then you are complaining somebody did not.
Exactly. You understand, right? That happened along.
Yeah.
All right. In case the listeners just heard that, that's the people in the guests in the studio lamenting about Nigeria striking. Therefore, just took like.
Okay.
All right. So I mean, this is a thing that happened with people on either lines in all the regions of the country, right? And everybody is accusing every other person of the same offense, and then they're just refusing to acknowledge that invitation to introspection. Why don't you just look inside? Before you throw stones, make sure the house you live in is not made of glass.
I feel you are looking at everything from a privileged position.
Yeah, I believe that.
That's why.
I don't doubt it.
You are able to make this sort of judgment. For someone that is very emotional, he cannot think, he can't conceptualize all this one you are saying, all this introspection and all that. It's the first thing that comes to his mind.
As a normal human,
you are more
by human nature,
emotional than rational.
It's not even just emotional rationality. It's more like normal human nature. It's more like nobody enjoys what causes some kind of, I don't want to use the word pain, because of course there are some persons who will say they enjoy pain.
But loss.
But the thing is, exactly, it's not as if it's not normal in human nature to just accept defeat.
Exactly.
You understand? So you don't want to be so quick to accept defeat. Probably that's why they say there are levels to grief or stuff. Because when it comes, man, it's not as if it's not as if you just fall down into it. So the whole thing is it's a gradual tapering down stuff. You understand? So probably they're in different stages of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't actually probably fall back into the last ladder of it. I don't know if you get my point. Because now we are just trying to judge them or analyze them based on how we view them to be.
Yeah.
You understand? It's normally like, okay, no, we'll not introspect and say, no, this is where it's you
But
that.
they are just acting out now because they are angry.
Exactly.
So
after that is out. You
well,
now go back.
Talking about the stages of grief,
Yes.
what I brought up was the denial, right? The second
That's
step in
one
the
of
stage
the
of grief
things,
is
exactly.
anger.
Exactly. So they are just going towards those stages, and then gradually, and probably
Alright.
we meet them
So-
at certain point, and then we
And then
characterize
So
them.
I think a good resting point for the whole episode would be that okay, I actually encouraged by some of the things I've been seeing over the past few hours about invitation to not actually grieve. Even if your candidates do not win, you don't have to grieve. I mean, you have to. You could grieve for the hope you had. That things could change.
You don't.
Yes,
it's how you handle
the reaction,
your grief.
exactly.
Exactly.
The reaction to the
How
grief.
you handle your
Yeah,
grief.
you shouldn't be too emotional about it, or even you
again,
can't ask
and
someone to
again,
not be
and
emotional,
again,
but
and
at least
again. And
do
again, let's
not be
point this thing
unfair.
fact-
Do not be unfair
Let's
about
point
it.
this in to the fact that okay, to an extent, even though that might not necessarily be a pivotal point, if there's fairness and justice, I mean, there is no difficulty in accepting defeat if you are reasonable enough.
Yes.
And let's not forget that a lot of people, we've had these things before. People will definitely be reasonable enough, at least the majority. But the problem comes in when the majority are not so quick to accept. Then you should ask questions. 2015, somebody lost. People were angry that they felt cheated. Somebody now felt, okay, no, I think I actually lost. The candidate called to congratulate.
Yes.
And now what actually happened? The followers felt, I think this guy is right. We actually lost.
Yeah.
And then they went down. It was like they went through the ladder of grief swiftly.
Immediately, yes.
You understand now?
Yeah.
2019, the same thing happened. The other candidate didn't call to congratulate, but the followers of that candidate that lost knew that
Yes.
he didn't do well enough. Nobody came out to say, let us grieve. You understand? Now let's not forget 2011, the candidate lost. This is with the background view that this candidate had tried, failed, and
times.
this was like a best chance for him, and then
And
he
he
failed.
lost. No,
There was nothing you could tell his followers
Yes.
or his supporters. They just escalate their grief
Yes.
because they perceive some kind of distrust and injustice.
Injustice, yes.
Now, if the majority of persons who are grieving or angry are much, you want to look at, okay, what actually happened. I cannot come to an exam where I didn't read for and I
now be
fail
complaining.
and I now be
And
complaining.
too
It
emotional
doesn't make
about
sense. You understand? But if I had given my effort into this exam and then I was convinced, however true my conviction might be, generally,
Didn't do well, God.
whatever, and then the result comes out and then I didn't do well, I'll be like, no, this is not fair. I tried my best. My best might not be enough, but at least, okay, let us look into this thing. Did you actually do
There's
your
enough
best?
evidence that show you did not
Exactly.
do your best, actually.
But when
there's
these
not
guys
enough
are coming
evidence,
out and then there's not enough evidence that you didn't do your best, you ought to, it's normal, natural
Just
human
act out.
beings to act out. The best thing is, okay, calm your grief. We are going to look into this thing. If there is no injustice, there won't be anger and grief. That's for sure. Or let me not
But
say
at
if there's
least it will
injustice.
be-
If there's no perception of injustice,
Exactly.
there's no
Or
anger.
or at least
So
if there was some justice,
Or better
Exactly.
if there was reasonable
explanation.
justice or
And I think
reasonable
I think
explanation
one
for
of the
these things,
candidates,
you are actually giving people tools to handle their grief better.
I think one of the candidates, I think in trying to call for calm, he made a statement which actually captures the whole thing. He said, "Peace is not the absence of violence, or it's not the absence of violence, but the presence of justice. If there is justice, glaring, we are at home. My team comes to play your team. No Pasha, we won you. We won't complain. Arsenal drew a game. The fans were complaining, right? But of course, they've actually lost some other games, but did they actually
not
complain?
complain
They
for
said, no, our team was bad. So if there's that iota, that view, that picture of fairness, of course you don't have any. But if it is missing, then there's a problem, not just on these guys, but also on the system. So why we might want to push some blames on these guys for wanting to transfer their second stage, the anger stage of grief, to others.
Yeah.
We just want to look at why are they
why the
grieving.
system failed them,
That's
that
just
made
fair
them
How the system failed them.
Exactly.
to make them
It's just
grieve
fair
this
enough.
particular.
So of course we'll be hoping that in the coming days and weeks we will get some more
Soon
answers
clear, yeah.
and
Yeah,
that
definitely. It's a gradual process,
people
and
will
we're heading
be
there.
given the tools to handle their grief better if necessarily, if at all, if they have to, or at least that their grievances will be addressed.
Yes.
adequately, and we'll be looking forward to that. And we hope people will get to be rational about their actions and reactions and their utterances, of course. Not just be reasonable, be considerate. And this is speaking to everybody from all circles, of course.
It's not really easy to be reasonable. I'm not trying to give them.
It's not easy, but at least you have just attempt.
Because you don't tell the man who has gone to buy money with money, standing on the line for long hours to get fuel, coming to power his house because there's no electricity, and then he votes for a candidate that he feels is going to change the situation,
implement the change,
and then the system is trying to tell him that this your candidate will
to
not
subvert
work,
his vote,
and then you are telling him
to just calm down.
No right to air his anger. It doesn't make sense.
Here's the problem. The problem is you can air your anger, but at least do not direct it at people because they disagree with you. They don't subscribe to your idea. Everybody is feeling the pain. There's nobody who denies your pain. There's nobody who says they don't feel their pain. Everybody is just that in this case, people might feel for some reason or another, of course, for objective or subjective reason, that their own grievances are best addressed by different people. You can't have everybody. No, because this is, sorry please, but I will have this might lead to an elongation of the episode, but this was a problem with the campaign process or the supporters of many of the various groups. We kept putting up certain candidates as putting or placing certain messianic qualities on these candidates, and this one thing I kept saying even during the election, that this is a problem. This was the problem we made as Nigerians in 2015, right? Bringing up somebody as a messiah, and there's in fact
if I take their point of view, what do you advise these guys? That because their hope was dashed first, therefore they should not try it again? It doesn't make sense.
No, of course not. No. My point here is this. The point here is this: that when you are grieving, when you are making your grievances clear, you are elucidating your anger via the various media, elucidate it clearly, direct your
I get your point.
direct your concerns towards the bodies that are able to address them, not towards a particular group
I feel
of people because they disagree with your own ideas.
So hypothetical. Let's paint a picture and try to view it from their own perspective. Okay. Now, this guy suffers fuel scarcity as much as I do.
Yes.
He suffers naira scarcity as much as I do. The economy is not favoring him as much as I do. You understand? And we have seen clearly that it is because of these policies of these guys.
Yes.
That is causing this thing.
Yes.
Somebody comes up and tells us there's a different way to do this thing. Oga, show us your record. Now, I personally am convinced that this guy could actually do a little more better than these guys.
Yes.
And then I say, this is the guy I want to support, and I think this guy is good. But you are going back to this same system that has failed us, and is failing us. And then I can't do it alone because I still need you to join hands so that we'll get this guy to power.
What do you do then?
And now you are telling me no. Do you now blame these guys for trying to view these guys as an enemy to his own progress? Because now what I perceive now will be like, this guy is probably so obstinate to reasonability. And I have every reason to think so. Because
he will be if he doesn't have enough reason to agree with you.
We are eating and now we vomited our eating.
Now, Sati,
you understand? These are vomiters. And I tell you, come, let's go and get another food. And they are dragging me back to our vomit.
Sati, here's the point. Here's the point that you didn't get with my previous point about reach of the particular candidate. The thing here is this: you can't expect a person who's always voted along ethnic lines and who has only known to vote along ethnic and religious lines to just of a sudden during a particular cycle to then suddenly adopt the line of your own reasoning and then start voting along different lines. After all, all these candidates are promising the same thing. They promise an end to their suffering. Right now, for you who is enlightened to have, or who is who for in some ways privileged to have seen certain qualities in these candidates and certain flaws in these other candidates, and who is privileged to of course perceive certain misgivings or certain deceptions in some of these candidates. Now it's up to you then to sell your point to these other people. You can't convince them by antagonizing them.
No, that's the point.
You have to sell your point to them. By antagonizing them, you drive them further away.
We are trying to make it too hypothetical. It's not as if when I come and I say I am for this guy, you tell me I'm for this guy, and start antagonizing you. No, discussions always happen at first. Let's be factful here. When you engage with somebody that from your discussion is this person is foolish, will you want to continue that discussion?
Here's the point I'm making.
No, wait. Let's. That's what I said, but let's stop being.
In the previous point,
let me finish.
In the previous point I made about the reasons for some of the failures of the Labour Party, for one, about the issue of their reach or lack of thereof. It's about, imagine what could have been done if they had a certain core of members, or say volunteers, for example, in some of these parts, who could actually do that good job for them of spreading their word. You understand? Of spreading their points in these places. What I'm trying to say is,
let's stop. Let's keep our hypothesis one side. We are trying to be cast in the air.
Well,
this is simple.
Much of what we have now, we are hypothesizing much of what you can do.
This is simple. Yes. You engage somebody. I tell you, this is red. You tell me this is white. I say, no, bro, look at it. It's red. You say it's white.
Now, the point is, did the engagement even take place in the first place? That's the problem.
That's what I'm telling you.
The engagement even take place.
Let's not act as though everybody just came first day and say, hey, you get out, you are this. No. This has been we're not looking at it from individual perspective. This is a general discussion. You understand? General discussion. This guy, let's not forget that the Labour Party or the Obedience didn't accept him, Peter Obi, at day one. This number grew over time. Why?
Yes.
Because he kept convincing some. Exactly.
Which goes back to my point about, do I say, is it the time or is it oversight?
Wait, let's not make the whole thing
discussions that,
because this is something that is growing over time. You understand? This is something that is growing over time. It's not as though he just came one day and these people accepted him, and those who don't accept him have issue. Now, if I've been listening to this guy speaking over time, it's making sense. You have been listening to this guy speaking over time, the same time it's making sense. You have been listening to this guy speaking over time, it's making sense. Me, I've accepted him. You took extra 2 days to accept him.
What you're overlooking is the issue of
this guy now is saying,
online.
Yes. Wait, this guy is saying
and
no matter
in the media.
What. This guy is saying no matter what, I'm not accepting it. And I say, guy, how far? You know,
why?
This is not as if I'm just meeting you for first time. I know a reason why. So when you see this guy attacking, it's not as if I just come day one. Friend, follow, bam, you are very stupid. Why are you bad? No, let's not make it look like that's what the case is. It's more like we have all been listening to this guy.
Not totally.
We are suffering the same problem. What he's saying resonates with what resonates with you and me. You understand? We both wake up and then we suffer the same thing.
But then you are still not.
You are still obstinate. Most cases, check this thing. It's not as if those who are obstinate about it are even in better position than those who are not.
Yes.
That's annoying enough. It's more like I'm trying to save this guy.
Is it annoying enough?
It's not natural. Wait, it's not natural that, for instance, let's say, okay, you become a doctor. Somebody comes to the hospital. He says he's having pneumonia. Do you know the cure for pneumonia? Yes. You know the cure for pneumonia. You're going to get antibiotics. But you meet him, he tells you, no, antibiotics will not cure me. You say, no, I'm very sure. You said, no, antibiotics will not cure me.
And the patient has the right.
He now tells you probably cow urine. You yourself, how will you look at that person? So this is just the same thing. You know, it's like I'm trying to save this guy, or let us try and save this thing. But this person is seen differently. And then for the basic fact of it,
the patient has the right to autonomy. You can't force the treatment on the patient.
I'm not saying you have to force the patient.
But
that's it. So what do you do then? So what do you do? Do you abuse the patient? Do you kick the patient out?
Let us be natural. If not for professionalism.
Yes, so you have to be professional, right? So you have to be professional.
Exactly, but this one is not a professional interaction.
But here's the thing. How do you make the patient?
Have you not seen the comment?
In that case,
Sati,
in that case, how do you make the patient accept your treatment?
See, I just brought the patient's case because this one now we are being professional.
Yes,
but this is a street interaction.
You
don't expect me now to come and say,
sorry sir,
my name is this.
Say you are not bound as a doctor by the principles of professionalism or the ethics, the principle of medical ethics.
You act naturally as a human.
Do you force the treatment?
Yes,
exactly.
But you see, will you still be aggressive to him?
Wait, whether you are aggressive, if you are going to be aggressive or not, how do you make the patient? Are you going to, if you want
to make the patient,
if your goal is to make the patient accept the treatment,
now I just
do you think being aggressive with the patient can ever make him accept the treatment?
I just remembered something. We have a lecturer. He had one of our classmates, a student, for instance. Not for instance, actually happened, but I'm not going to call names. Now, him as a lecturer, now what is he trying to do? He's trying to help us to learn. He now says, come and do this thing. The guy tried it and he did it wrong. He came and then he did it correctly. This is what I'm doing. Come and try it. He came and did it wrong. He said, you and last student come and do it. The student did it right. You come and do it. Everybody got it right. You come and do it again. He got it wrong. You student, show this guy how to do this thing. He showed him. Come and do it. He got it wrong. The lecturer said, see, I'm sorry to say this, but you are very stupid. Because you know why? This is natural human. For goodness sake, I'm trying to help this guy, but he's not showing any improvement or effort to even learn it. So this is normal, natural human activity. It's a normal response.
Yes.
So you don't put it on these guys that they are being. No, it's not day one stuff. Like I said, it's not as if the guy came and said, "Come and do this thing. You got it wrong. You are very stupid." No, it's more of a gradual. I think that's actually.
I don't know where Sati stands here, but I think we'll just have to take our parting shots now. All right. Okay, Muri, please. Your parting shot.
This has been a very interesting discussion, and honestly, I enjoyed it. It's if not because of the time constraints and all, it could take the entire day, and we'll still not be able to exhaust all the talking points. But I hope this is enough to have interested our audience, and I hope we did not bore them with all our discussion. Thank you very much for having me on this program.
All right, Ansati.
Well, actually, like we said, this is a dicey topic, and then it's if we have to continue to go on and on and on. And please, I'm actually a naysayer. I'm the devil's advocate. I'm the voice for the voiceless. And what I say, to an extent, might be my view and not my view, but nonetheless, it's to give a balanced idea of the whole thing. So this is Sati dropping off mic on the floor.
Thank you, Sati. Thank you, Samuri. I think for my own parting shot, I think I would just like to encourage people to please exercise some restraint. In the coming days, in the coming weeks, we'll get some more answers to our questions from the concerned authorities, and we'll be looking forward to that. And for the results we've seen so far, we of course are looking forward to the best in the coming years, and of course we are ready to fight. Of course, that's the thing. That's one thing we've been ready for before the elections. Wherever it is that's coming to power, we are ready to correct them, to tackle them whenever they are going anti-masses. They're not doing what favors the people,
irrespective of if we support them or not.
Whether we
position
voted for them or not.
This is the generation.
Exactly, and that's one thing we should remember.
So the idea is whoever becomes, we are actually growing.
Yes,
so the idea is take your position as a citizen. And
exactly.
Do what citizens
exactly.
do.
So whoever comes as a president is not president for the people who voted for him alone. Is a president for all Nigerians and must be ready to answer to all Nigerians. Exactly. All right. Talking about that, this is the scientist signing out. Thank you for listening this far. Catch you in the next episode.